Okay. See, okay, yeah, we're recording. Alright. A lot of talk has been made about history. And I've always said, as a post-futurity scarcist, sorry, as a post-scarcity futurist, which means that, well, in my case, I don't believe in actual post scarcity. What I mean is that a lot of times when futurists say post scarcity, they mean near post scarcity or a minimum scarcity in one or more categories. Like, generally it's to do with resources, but there isn't always physical resources. Sometimes it's um, available information, education, infrastructure, the free flow of information. And, well, there's other factors. There's, land, workforce, uh, power. I mean, physical power, like electricity, oil, gas, food, anything that can be valuable resource and can be put to the minimum of scarcity, or a resource rich society somehow is, well, what post scarcity is about. So when people say, post scarcity futurism, as in like, well, if we use technology in a certain way, this would cause a benefit to society through technology, either economic or, more importantly, well, not more importantly, but ultimately the resource abundance, darn purple, would be, how can I put it? It would ultimately, what I've found, and maybe I'm wrong, is that the idea that a technology carefully applied gives a economic or physical abundance, and that in turn can translate, or physical capital can translate into social capital. In other words, if you're doing well, you can make things better for yourself. Now, people who are into social justice don't always argue this. You can be rich and black and still be shot. You can be a rich woman and still be subjugated to the home. And when I hear this social justice, it's like, well, I think of individualism. And this is often touted in conservative circles: personal responsibility, private ownership, free markets. And the reason I'm so critical of egalitarian or social justice, or a lot of things that, especially as a post-scarcity futurist, really sound good, is because they take the aspect of ownership away. somebody is deciding for you what's good for everyone. It's not just collectivist. It's why, paradoxically, multi-major corporations are like, hey, why can't we just be free? And yet, in a private way, they're owning us. Well, they may be controlling the market, and unfairly, I admit, when it comes to getting laws made and dealing and side-skirting free market forces by going internationally. And these multinational conglomerates, some would say, who libertarians would say, conservative, individualist economically, why I consider myself progressive, that they're going to, they just want comparative advantage. And that sounds good when you have resources that are fixed. They're concrete. They can be measured. You're not dealing with a poem or a song or how somebody feels. You're dealing with real issues. How much does that cost? What is that made from? Where did you get your resources? Who owns that? Because, no one's going to bail these people out if they fail. But if they don't friggin' give their own employees $15 an hour, oh my, the feels. Now, don't get me wrong. Economically, I am progressive. It's just I'm admitting that I see the conservative point of view. And at least the history of it speaks to me is that libertarianism, which was just classic liberalism, comes from an age where kings and queens and royalty to support socialism, owned land, they owned property, and pretty much they owned people. They owned you. And it's like, well, and there was a lot of things like the Magna Carta and other things that said, no, you're being bad. We want rules. We want rights. But then you get issues like human suffrage and regional sovereignty of Aboriginal people. That doesn't mean Aborigines from Australia, but anybody who was homegrown, versus friggin' those nasty immigrants. Manifest Destiny, Indian plight. I read some of that about the Indians, and I'm sorry, indigenous Americans or indigenous peoples. They weren't Americans. They aren't friggin' Indians. Wah, wah, wah. Rightly so, but I ain't crying about it. You know what I mean? I don't care. I want truth. I don't want the friggin' history books to lie and say, like a 1950s movie and say, yeah, we were just so nice to be so nice to them, and the blacks were just happy friggin' being friggin' slaves because what were they supposed to do? Now they were sharecroppers and, and stuff, and they were just treated really bad after the North friggin', came in with the friggin', after the Civil War, and screwed them up. I forgot what it's called. They were really much happier singing and dancing in the fields, picking that cotton. No, but liberals don't get, or at least freaking uh, social justice people, and when they're talking about history, is there were people when the Constitution was being written that were like, hey, this should apply to other people. But then again, there was a lot less people, and there was a big territory. See, there was an abundance of resources from the from the East Coast to the West Coast. They didn't see that there was an abundance. They just saw opportunity. And some ratty natives, some savages, racial and religious bigotry, or whatever, we're the godless, we're God's people, and these are heathens and savages, And they were going to be exploited anyway, because if it wasn't the Portuguese or the Dutch or the Spanish or the French or the Hungarians or whoever, it was going to be the British and anyway, or the Germans. The New World was devouring. I mean, the Old World was being devoured by the New World. It was a bonanza. And I've gotten into arguments before about talking about blacks and Indians. Well, they were a good resource, but ultimately they weren't cutting it. I mean, doesn't it seem crazy to herd up a bunch of friggin' black people, put them on a plantation, whip them, make them work, do other things, and not expect every once in a while them go wild on you, and friggin', just like they do nowadays, friggin' come over and cut your head off. Why is this happening, Gertrude? We don't understand why we friggin' got all of these friggin' what do you call them? Didn't do nothings. We didn't do nothings either, but, well, makes me wonder if different races have different, and not necessarily superior and inferior, because there's no fixed point of reference, but they don't have slight racial behavioral tendencies. Probably mostly along lineages, Truth be honest, there's probably all kinds of people that are similar, but you got the short, fat, bad ones, you got the freaking tall, snotty ones, the whole stereotypes. Oh look, there's the freaking weird ones, there's the freaking, there's the happy ones, all these archetypes of personality and temperament, and science. Well, it's hard to believe that political correctness and social justice and all that, from starting out to be wanting to be fair to people of different races and two different genders, male and female, turned into all this social justice postmodernist bullshit. Oh well, I'm almost 50. I'll be dead soon. The world can go happily floating by without me, Woo, 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 woo. Whatever. I mean, 50 frigging things for, I'm sorry. I didn't want to turn this into a regressive, bigoted, sexist, racist rant again. But it's like, well, history. Go read the friggin' history. Please. And read it without your friggin' rose-colored 1960s hippie friggin' social justice warrior glasses on. That's all I'm saying. Bye. Man, what is with this?